today we're going to learn about for loops. So a for loop structure is a type of loop that you use typically when you know exactly how many times you want the code to repeat. So as we discussed in the last lesson, the while loops are typically used if you don't know how many times you're going to loop, typically, and the for loops are used if you do know. And that's the main difference. So to make one, you simply write for x in range, and then we choose a range. And in our case, we're going to choose something relatively small because it's easier to check with the small numbers. And then I'm going to say print x. So what I'm saying is for x within the range 0 up to but not including 50, print the value of x. And that is going to give me 0 through 49. Okay. Now we can make this a little bit more fun, and we can print out only the even numbers. So if x mod 2 is 0. So what this means is, let me close up a little bit more. What this means is if the value of x divided by 2 is 0, that means that we're going to print x. So if the value of x divided by 2 is 0, it means it's an even number. And that's what this modulus does. It gets the remainder of. And it's very useful. It's going to come up fairly often, so get used to using modulo. I'm going to press run. And would you look at that? We printed all the even numbers. Okay. There's a couple things about for loops to give yourself a little bit more control over it. There's break statements and continue statements. So let's just talk about continue for now. So let's say else continue. So this is kind of what it was doing before, but I'm going to be explicit about it because I want to explain what this means. Continue is a way to continue the loop. So like, let's say there was code, after x equals, and we'll have it look like this so that we can see the output. So this means that every time the loop, every time the conditional statement comes to an end, we're going to print. But this continue breaks out of this loop, and it causes us to skip the whatever's remaining in the loop. So I'm going to press run. So we have x is 0, x is 2, x is 4, x is 6, but we don't have x is 1, x is 3, x is 5. We don't have that. And that is because for all the odd numbers, we're saying to continue. And continue bounces us out of that current iteration of the loop. Not the whole loop. We don't stop looping. Just the current iteration that we're on, we just go back to the top. So we see continue here, and then you're going to go back to the top and continue the iterations. Break is different. You use break if you want to cut out of the loop entirely. So we'll create a condition here. We'll say elif x is, how about 10? So elif x is 10, we're going to break. Run. Okay, so here we go. All right. You know what, that was actually rather silly. So the 10 is going to meet this condition before it ever meets this condition. So use with what this conditional statement says, if x mod 2 is 0, so that means 10 is going to meet that criteria, so it's going to print 10. It's never going to get to this elif. So I'm going to have to change it to an even number for it to occur. So elif x is 11, we're going to break out of the loop. Let's try it again. All right, great. So that did exactly what we wanted it to. As you can see, even though we have a for x in range 0 to 50, we stopped at 10, and we stopped seeing them at 10, and that is because we have a break statement. This bounces us out of the entire loop. So once x turned to 11, so x mod 2 is not 0, so it's going to go to the next statement, and that's elif x is 11. Okay, it's 11. Break. That means that we jump out of the loop and we print whatever else. Oh, well, we don't print this. If it were like this, we print it. But we just stop. So you see that we stopped right there. We could also do other things like create shapes. We can try to make an isosceles triangle using a for loop, and we will use asterisks to illustrate the isosceles triangle. So I'm going to get rid of this, and we're going to say for x in range, and then I'm just going to put a 5 here. Now, this is the same thing as starting from 0. So the range function defaults at 0. So this is the same thing as writing this. So I can do this as well. So I'm going to say print, and then we want to put an asterisk. We want to create an asterisk, and for every iteration, we want the length of the asterisk to be increased by 1, because that's going to give the shape of the triangle. So I'm going to say print, and then I'm going to say string asterisk times, and we'll say x plus 1. And then we'll go ahead and we'll run this. Okay, so we get a pretty cool isosceles triangle. So what happened is x is going to start from 0 up to, but not including 5. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for each time, we want it to print this asterisk times x plus 1. Remember, x starts at 0. So we're adding 1 to it first, because if we didn't do that, then we're not going to get a star in the first iteration. So we say x plus 1. So first x is 0, so 1 times the asterisk gives us this first line. Then x is 1, and then that gives us 1 plus 1, which is 2, and 2 times this string, this asterisk, gives us 2 asterisks, and so on and so forth until we finally reach 4, and then 4 plus 1 gives us 5, so we get 5 asterisks on the last iteration. You can make cool shapes using for loops too. We can also use Python to reverse a string. So as another example, we'll go ahead and we'll do that right now. So we're going to backspace, we're going to get rid of that. For character, I'm just going to abbreviate the word character to char in Word. So we can use this to iterate through strings as well. But we might need a word first, right? Word equals Python. There we go. All right, so for character in Word, so that means for the first iteration, we start at P, then the second iteration, we start at Y, and then so on and so forth. So that's what this is doing. We're going to say reversed word equals char plus reverse word. And we're going to make a variable called reversed word too. So this is going to store the reverse word that is being constructed as the loop continues. All right. So reversed word is an empty string, and the word that we're going to reverse is Python. And the reversed word is going to be the character plus the reversed word, which at this point is empty for now. All right, so next we want to print the reverse word. So I'm going to step outside of the for loop because I don't want to do this at every iteration. Once I'm done constructing the reverse word from the for loop, I want to backspace so that I'm not indented anymore. And I want to print reverse word equals, comma, reverse word. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. And as you can see, the reverse word is storing the reverse of the word Python. So this is how to iterate through a string. And this will make a little bit more sense once we go through lists, which we are set to look at pretty soon. Next, I want you to try to do this on your own. I want you to try to print all the odd numbers from 1 through 20. So try to do this on your own, and then if you can't do it, come back, or if you're done doing it, just check your work against mine. So print all the odd numbers from 1 through 20. We know that one way to do this is to print 1, print 3, etc. until I get to 20, but that wouldn't be very efficient. So instead of doing that, I'm going to use a for loop. So for x in range, and I'm going to put 21 because we go up to but not including the last number. So I want 1 through 20. So to do so, I need to go through 21 because the end of the range isn't going to include 21, but it will go to 20. So print all the odd numbers. If x mod 2, remember, modulus gives us the remainder if x was divided by 2. So x mod 2 is not equal to 0. So if the remainder is not 0, then we know that the number is odd. So then we're going to print x. Okay, I'm going to run it. And there we go. 1, 3, 5, 7, and 19. So this is how to print all the odd numbers. And if you did it on your own, good job. And if not, that's okay too, because you're going to practice this. Finally, we're going to end this with FizzBuzz. So FizzBuzz is a programmer interview question. It's a very basic question that you're going to get, or that you may get, depending on where you go. But we're going to do it right here so that you get a feel for how to do it. So the way you do FizzBuzz is if the number is divisible by 3, you print fizz instead of the number. If the number is divisible by 5, we're going to print buzz instead of the number. And if the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, we're going to print fizzbuzz instead of the number. Otherwise, we print the number. Okay? So I'm going to, so if the number is divisible by 3, print fizz instead of the number. Divisible by 5, print buzz instead of the number. And if it's 3 and 5, fizzbuzz instead of the number. And in all cases, or in all other cases, we're just going to print the number itself. So see if you could do it on your own. And if you can't, that's okay too. So, right. So to do this, we're going to start by creating our for loop for x in range. And let's do this from 1 to 100. That's good. That's still small enough that we can check our work. So we're going to start at 1 and we're going to go to 101. And let's see. So we said if x mod 3, if it's divisible by 3, we're going to print fizz. Okay. Elif x divisible by 5 is 0, we're going to print buzz. And then last but not least, the least condition, if x mod 3 and, so if x mod 3 and x mod 5 is 0, print fizzbuzz. Okay, and then for all other cases, we're going to print just the number. So we're going to print x. Now this is incorrect as it stands, and the reason why is because of the ordering. So if having the elif at the very bottom doesn't serve us, because if the number's divisible by 3 and 5, it's going to get caught in this first conditional statement because it's divisible by 3. And so it'll never get to x mod 3 and x mod 5. So we're going to cut this from here, and we're going to place it here. So we're going to start here, and then we're going to create elif after. I want it to be here. So elif x mod 3 is 0. Then we're going to print fizz. Oh, I think I left fizzbuzz down there. So this one should be fizzbuzz. And then I want it to have 2 of those, and then I can delete it here. That was probably a very roundabout way of just doing something that's very easy, and I'm sorry for that, but I wanted to explain the logic first. I think that that's most important, especially because you guys are just starting out with Python. So we're following the criteria. If x mod 3 and 0, and yeah, that's better. If x mod 3 is 0 and x mod 5 is 0. So the entire condition has to be written out. So we're going to try this out. I'm going to press the run button, and we get fizz buzz at 5, fizz, and then the number 15 gives us fizz buzz, and so on. And so this is one of those programming problems that you might get at an interview at the very basic level, and it's fun just on its own. So pat yourself on the back because you learned something really important today. And that's pretty much it for for loops. You got lots of practice already during